Exciting, thrilling, awesome. Let's take a look.
Welcome back to Talkin Mets with Rob and another Mets pre-game live. How is everybody doing today on this lovely Thursday, July 6th? The Mets are on a 4-game winning streak and looking for the sweep against the Arizona Diamondbacks. And hopefully everybody enjoyed last night. That was probably that's probably the biggest game of the year. They needed that win, especially after the dominant performance that was pitched by Kodai Senga. 8 innings, 12 strikeouts, gave up that one solo home run, and it turned everything into a lot of negativity after that home run happened to Christian Walker, and it looked like the Mets were going to lose a 1-0 ball game, but not before the 9th inning and the heroics and the great at-bat from Francisco Alvarez. The home run was obviously great, but it was the at-bat itself that was beautiful, right? The fouling off the pitches, working the count, taking pitches. It was just that right before he hit that home run, just fouled that pitch off to just get a piece of it. And that is exactly why Francisco Alvarez, he is a guy that is here for the moment. He is not afraid of those type of big situations, those important situations. If you heard his post-game interview, he says he don't even think about failure. And that's something that this Mets team needs. They need a guy and somebody who has that mentality that doesn't think about failure. They only think about positive results. And that's where Francisco Alvarez is different. And what the Mets lacked last year, where they needed that big hit in September, where they needed that big hit in Atlanta, where they needed that big hit against San Diego in the playoffs, they didn't have that guy that wasn't afraid of the moment. You can clearly see that Francisco Alvarez isn't afraid of that moment. He relishes that moment, and that is something that the Mets lacked last year, and they lack most of this year. But again, the numbers show it. This guy is clutch. 9 home runs in 6 innings or later, and I believe it's 7 home runs that either gave the Mets tied the game in a ball game for the Mets or put the Mets ahead. 7 out of his 15 home runs either tied the ball game or put the Mets ahead, and that is exactly the type of player you want in a big spot in Francisco Alvarez. And let's not make no mistake about it. Let's give a lot of credit for Brett Beatty yesterday, who put a good at-bat together against a lefty in Chafin to get on for Mark Cannon to swing it at the first pitch and get that RBI triple to give the Mets the lead and obviously the game-winning run in the 9th inning. So, and again, a lot of people are mad about the lineup. Brett Beatty is not in the lineup because he has soreness in his hamstring. That is the reason why Luis Guillorme is playing today. I don't have no excuse for Vogelbach in the lineup. I can't give you a reason for that, except that the numbers probably show, again, for you analytics people, the numbers probably show that Vogelbach has good numbers against this pitcher. I don't know. I don't like that. Vogelbach is batting 5th, and with a struggling Pete Alonso, you would think you would want a better hitter behind Pete Alonso for protection. I don't know why Vogelbach's in the lineup, and if you want him in the lineup, you should be batting lower in the lineup. And Canada's not in the lineup today, which is kind of odd after a big hit last night. But again, these new age teams, when they use analytics a lot, they don't care about gut feeling. They don't care about hot hitters at all. I mean, the only reason why Pham has continued to be in the lineup, not because of his hot streak, because of the fact he complained and saying, I can hit righties, and doesn't care about the analytics and was voicing his opinion. Maybe more players need to voice their opinions and saying, hey, I can play this today or something like that. I don't know, but this is baseball as we know it. Unfortunately for all of us, we look at it, at least I look at it, is that I'd rather play the hot hand than looking at the numbers. I don't care if a guy is 10 for 10 with batting 1,000 and has 5 home runs against a guy. If the guy is 2 for his last 27, it does not mean that he's going to hit the pitcher that he's supposedly good against. It doesn't always happen like that anymore in baseball today. And that's I'm telling you, I haven't looked at the Vogelbach numbers against this pitcher, but I'm assuming it's probably decent. That's the only thing I can think of, because I don't have another explanation for it except that it's probably analytically driven, in my opinion. So, with that said, guys, don't forget to please hit on that like button. I'll take you all the way until 9 o'clock. I do know the game starts at 9:40. Unfortunately, I have to go to work. So we're going to get a pregame show for an hour at 9 o'clock. And again, I'm going to give you the lineup right now so we can discuss it a little bit further. Let me just pop open my MLB game day. All right. So we got Carlos Carrasco on the mound for the Mets, going for the sweep. And, of course, for the Arizona Diamondbacks, we have Ryan Nelson, I believe that's what it's called, for the Diamondbacks. So Brandon Nimmo's leading off, playing center field. Tommy Pham, who is in the lineup every single day, is batting second. I like Pham batting second in this lineup, playing left field. Francisco Lindor batting third, playing shortstop. Pete Alonso cleaning up, playing first base. Daniel Vogelbach DH batting fifth. Starler Marte batting sixth, playing right field. Jeff McNeil batting seventh, playing second base. Francisco Alvarez batting eighth and catching, and Luis Guillorme batting ninth and playing third base. I would have liked to see Alvarez behind Pete Alonso, giving him a little bit of protection. But Alvarez numbers, and I like to look at numbers and batting orders, and when he's pushed up to the fifth spot or the third spot for a couple of times this year, his numbers aren't very good. And unfortunately, Alvarez has really good numbers when he bats eighth or ninth, and particularly eighth. And I know people don't like Alvarez that low in the lineup, but again, it gives a little bit of a threat in the bottom of the order. in my opinion. So exactly, okay, Christian. So I don't have no idea. I'm assuming it's just a righty lefty match, righty lefty matchup. So he never faced Reed Nelson. So there you go. So again, I don't have no explanation for it. If you're gonna bat Vogelback, I don't want to bat him fifth behind Pete Alonso. I mean, I would have gave that spot to Alvarez and just let him run with it, see what happens. But again, Alvarez doesn't have good numbers up in the order, right? He's been excellent, very good numbers batting in the 8th spot. Yeah, well, Mike, I mean, everything with McNeil this year, buddy. You know, it's glove, it's his bat. I mean, you can't be a batting champion, and you should be an easily. It shouldn't even be hard for Jeff McNeil to bat 300. Yet he's batting what, 250 something? I'm sorry. He provides no power. If you're not going to provide any power at all, you got to be hitting at least 310 because you are useless at this point in the lineup. Jeff McNeil has been absolutely terrible this year, and it's been a big reason why the Mets have been struggling this year, even though it's been mostly pitching. When the offense needs to get going here, especially when Alonso's not going, you need Jeff McNeil. And unfortunately for Jeff McNeil, and he's batting in the part of the order where he was very good last year. And, you know, this is a guy that you want at the top of the order. You know, Jeff McNeil should be batting second if Marte's not batting there. But because he's not a guy, his on base is down, his bat to ball ratio is extremely down, and that is a huge problem for the New York Mets because they need McNeil, who's provided no power this year, to bat 300 or better, because we need a guy like that to get on base for our run producers in Lindor and Alonso and Alvarez. And that is the huge problem for the Mets this year. I don't know what's wrong with Jeff McNeil. You know, if you look at his career, it's really good 1 year, off year, really good year, off year. So it's been an on and off type of thing. And remember, guys, if you remember in the offseason of 2021, there was a lot of talk about Jeff McNeil getting traded. And again, I was still on board with that because he's way too inconsistent for me to trust him. Yes, I like the versatility. He can play second. He can play third. He can play outfield, left field, right field. You know, he's good in that aspect, but he also hasn't been as good as he was last year defensively. And the bat, I mean, he's basically, I mean, if you really look at his numbers this year, he's a fringe major leaguer the way he's performing. No power. He ain't a run producer, and he's batting 250, less than 260. I'm sorry. You know, a struggling McNeil should be 290, 280 at the very least. And I'm watching the Yankees getting destroyed 8-0 in the third. So that is the thing that is really annoying about Jeff McNeil, because if I feel like he's better than this, and him having inconsistent years is a huge problem for the New York Mets, because they can't afford. They just gave McNeil a contract. They can't afford. I'm not talking afford money-wise. They can't afford then guys like Jeff McNeil not to be a trusted veteran in this lineup, because you do got Beatty, you do got Alvarez, guys who are still trying to work out all their kinks, right? We still want Beatty to have a better average. We need Alvarez, even though he's been very good power-wise and run-producing-wise, we need that average to at least get up to a 250 average, right? You know, these guys, Beatty and Alvarez, are going to be our run producers here, and you can't have Jeff McNeil batting 250. He is pointless in this lineup at this point. I don't think. Well, he used to bat for power in 2021. He hit 14, 15 home runs, and that's why his average was down. But I don't need McNeil to hit home runs. We need Jeff McNeil to get on base for our run producers, right? He was batting 6th. If you're going to bat Alvarez 8, you need Jeff McNeil to get on base for him. You know, in 2021, the power, I don't want Jeff McNeil hitting for home runs, but he's not even trying to hit home runs. He's just not putting bat to ball. His bat to ball ratio is tremendously down from last year, and that is a huge problem for the Mets if Jeff McNeil is going to continue to be this way. But the New York Mets are finding ways to win despite the lack of offense from Pete Alonso, the lack of offense from Jeff McNeil. Brandon Nimmo has been basically this team's MVP this year, and even yesterday, right? Nimmo, you're not going to kill Nimmo because Nimmo's been very good this year, but Nimmo had an 0 for yesterday. Alonso had an 0 for yesterday, and Lindor had an 0 for yesterday. Combined, they were 0 for 16. Yet the Mets still won because of their heroics of their two young guns in Beatty and Alvarez, and then of course Canna with the go-ahead run. So the Mets are finding ways to win. That was the thing last year that was so important for this team. Even when they were struggling offensively, they found ways to win. And that was majority of the reason why was because of their pitching. Excuse me. Was because of their pitching that kept them in the ball games. But that's what happened. That's why look at the Mets winning streak and look at the outings that their pitchers had, right? Scherzer wasn't great against the Diamondbacks, right? He wasn't that great. He was good. He gave up two leads, but the home runs he gave up were solo home runs, right? And kept his team within striking distance and didn't give up a go-ahead run or stuff like that. So he was giving up the home run ball, but was keeping his team in the ball game. And again, you want a lot more from Scherzer, right? That game should have been put away by Scherzer. But at the very least, he didn't have the big inning, right? When he got that bases loaded jam, he got out of it, right? The solo home runs, I'd rather him give up solo home runs than multi-home run shots. That's actually a pointless comment. Carroll and Alvarez play two different positions. Would I rather have Carroll in left field than Canna? Absolutely. But I'd rather have both of them. But they play two different positions, so it doesn't affect them even if they were on the same team. Carroll's a left fielder, right? Yeah, Scherzer was shaky, but he was shaky, but he also didn't give up the big inning. And again, we need more from Scherzer, right? That game should have been put away early. But he also gave you 6 innings, which is basically my threshold for this team this year. They've been dominant when their pitcher goes 6 innings. And, we got Carrasco today. Would you rather have Verlander on the mound? Absolutely. But you have Carrasco. Yeah, but that's a pointless conversation because both of them are very good right now. Right? Carroll has better numbers probably in the average department. But, again, it's hard to pick those guys. But picking one is hard. You know what I'm saying? Like, the Mets need a left fielder, but the Mets would also need a catcher. Yeah, Boogie, but you can trade Canna for a better hitter, but you're not getting – where are you getting a better hitter? Well, Mike, the reason why Drew Smith is on this team, and I think Trevor Gott is a big reason why the Mets got Trevor Gott is because they don't trust Drew Smith. Trevor Gott is going to be probably used more than Drew Smith is going to get opportunities where Drew Smith would have been getting opportunities. That's why those small trades that people laughed at and why Chris Flexen was in that deal was because the Mets took on money to get Trevor Gott, a veteran reliever who has control, who, if you look at his overall numbers, yes, his ERA is at 4, but if you look at his overall numbers, his strikeout rate is near 10. His walk rate is extremely low in 30 innings, 2.5 walks per 9. And his walks are really down. So his strikeout rate is high and his walks are down. That's exactly what you need from a relief pitcher, especially a Mets relief pitcher who loves to walk batters. Well, that is – well, you know what? Like I said, it's – yeah, Boogie, that's silly because Mark Canha – the Mets would have won the ballgame if it wasn't for Mark Canha yesterday. Mark Canha has his moments. Am I saying Mark Canha is a guy that – now, again, if everybody was doing their job, and that's considering Lindor, Alonso, McNeil, Marte, you wouldn't need Canha to be more important to this lineup. The reason why people are talking about Canha is because the guys that are supposed to be doing their jobs in the lineup are not doing their jobs. So it's gonna put a magnifying glass on Canha, on Vogelback, those type of guys. And that's where the Mets are running into problems because of the fact that Alonso is not playing well right now. Marte is kind of iffy. Lindor is having his struggles, but still having a good year, right? It's those guys that are amplifying the Mark Cannas of the world. If you're going to have to count on Mark Canna to win ball games on a nightly basis, you're going to have a long season. That's why the Mets are having a long season, because the guys in the lineup, when the Mets actually got good pitcher performances, weren't getting the consistency from the offense. And Mark Canna is what Mark Canna is. Mark Canna is having a very similar year to last year. Look at his numbers. He has a couple of games where he beats up the pitching staff, right? He plays very well against Philadelphia. He'll have big games. He'll have moments like last night, but he's not a guy you should be counting on to win ball games on a nightly basis. That's why you pay Lindor. That's why you have Alonso, who's going to get a huge contract. You're counting on those guys to get the job done. Canna should be an afterthought. If Canna comes through, great, even better. Canna was an afterthought last year because of how good Lindor and Alonso were last year, and how good Marte was last year, and how good Nimmo was last year. That's why Canna is magnified this year, because of the struggles from Marte and Alonso, and even Lindor average-wise, and even McNeil. People are looking for Canna, and that's why people are, going after Vogelback this year, when everybody was giving me nonsense numbers from Vogelback last year. Even though he was better last year, he wasn't what the Mets needed last year. And that was the big problem with the trade. But again, the prospect huggers were saying, why can't the Mets get anybody else? Well, guess what? The Mets didn't want to give up any top line prospects. And that's where the Mets fall into a category this year once again, right? Again, there's a lot of people that are saying if the Mets are within 4.5 games of a wild card spot, they're probably going to be buyers at the deadline. I don't think the Mets are there yet, right? My threshold is 3 games or less at the wild card spot, but I can see why people believe that 4.5 games from a wild card spot is a motive to buy and not sell off guys. Like, if you're 4.5 games, I could see you sell it. I could see you buying. So it's hard to determine, but again, the way we think as fans doesn't mean the same way that the organization thinks, right? If they believe the Mets are playing well, if they have a good next 3 weeks, and I'm not saying going on a 15-game winning streak. Even the 2019 Mets win 15 out of 16. But if the Mets go, say, 11-4 in the next 15 games, right? That will put them back at 500, probably a game or two above 500. And they'll be right in the mix for a wild card spot. Because if you haven't noticed lately, everybody who is ahead of the Mets aren't really going on a 4, 5, 6 game winning streak anymore. As I said, most of those teams in front of them had one really good week to put them back in a position where they are, right? They went 7-3-10. That's all the Mets have to do. If the Mets go 7-3 or 8-3 or something like that in their next 10, 11 games, they're right back into the mix. That's why when people said if it's over, it's embarrassing to say that, because all you need, and if you paid attention to the National League this year, all the teams, Philly, Milwaukee, Cincinnati, right? Even though they're hovering around with Milwaukee, but teams like just give me a second, guys. I just want to bring it up really quickly so I give you the right. The Dodgers, the Padres, right? Who the Mets are facing next. So the Mets can jump over the Cubs and the Padres in the next 4 days if they play well. They're playing the team in front of them. That's why this last 16-game stretch before the All-Star break was very important. That's why the games against St. Louis and Philadelphia were very disappointing, because those are teams at the time that were in front of them, right? That Philly series, that Sunday game against Philly, the Mets should have won that ball game. If they would have won that ball game, they would have gained a full game on Philadelphia, and they would have been 5.5 back of Philadelphia instead of 6.5 back. But the thing is with the Mets is that the fact that they got to win series. You win series, you're going to creep back up, especially against the Padres. The Padres have been struggling, right? The Mets have been better as of late, but they need to go in there and beat a struggling Padres team. I'm not saying sweep them. That would be great, but take 2 out of 3. If you take 2 out of 3, you're going to jump over the Padres. You're half a game behind them. So you would pass the Cubs, you would pass the Padres, and now you look at it, now there's only 3 teams in front of you, and one of those teams are in your division that you still play. If I'm not mistaken, we play them, I think, 7 more times this year. That's going to be crucial, right? You got Milwaukee and Cincinnati beating each other up, so they're gonna fall out of it a little bit, Milwaukee or Cincinnati. They're going to fall a little bit underneath. That's why that's NL Central is very important. And San Francisco, the Mets just won a series against. You see, they're an okay team, but they're not a team that's unbeatable. So they gotta have the Dodgers and the Diamondbacks in their division that they have to deal with. So when the Dodgers and the Diamondbacks face the Giants, you hope that those 2 teams beat them, because you're looking at the 3rd wildcard spot, even though the 2nd wildcard spot is only 8 games from your grasp. And again, all you need, and you see it with the Mets, right? The Mets, not even 5 days ago, were 10 games back of a wild card spot. They gained 3.5 games within a 5-game stretch. And that's why you do not just say the season is over, because mathematically, again, the Cubs, the Padres, the Brewers, the Giants, the Philadelphia Phillies. Look at a week stretch that they had. Their best week was why they're in this position. Other than that, they've been 500 teams. Look at the Mets. The Mets are on a 4-game winning streak. The Cubs just lost 1. The San Diego Padres won 3 in a row, right? They've been 6-4, 4-6 in their last 10. The Cubs 3-7. Milwaukee 6-4, right? The Giants 3-7. The Phillies have been good at 7-3, right? This is the Phillies 15, 16 game stretch where they've played very well. But these are stretches that all these teams have. These are not very good teams here, guys. These are fringe teams, just like the Mets have been. But if you put the rosters together and you look at team besides the Padres, right? Who has a better roster? The Brewers, the Giants, the Cubs, than the Mets? No. If they play to their level, their capabilities, if the players perform at the level they're supposed to, the Mets are better than those teams, right? The Padres roster is supposedly better than the Mets, yet they're a half a game better than the Mets. Well, Joe, that's what I'm saying, buddy. And that's the point, right? And that's why I'm saying the teams that are in front of the Mets had a 10-game stretch where they went 7-3, and that's why. And again, if the Mets would have had a 500 June, and that's why I go back to June, that's why June was very disappointing. June, if the Mets would have went 500 in June, they would be leading the 3rd wildcard spot by like 4 games. That's how embarrassing the National League is right now for that 3rd wildcard spot, because of the fact that the Mets only had to play 500 baseball in June to be leading a couple of games in that 3rd wildcard spot. So that shows you that nobody really ran away with anything here. Every one of these teams, including the Phillies, had a 10-game stretch that they played well. The Phillies a little bit better, right? And a little bit of that was losing that series to the Phillies. The Phillies beat the Mets 2 out of 3, where the Mets should have easily won 2 out of 3. I mean, are you afraid of the Phillies? Look at the Phillies. The Phillies barely beat the Mets that were playing extremely bad at that time, making terrible errors, bad base running, offense was terrible, right? That's the team that we're chasing here. A team you're in your own division where you play 7 more times. So, fortunately for the Mets, they're in a situation here where after you go through Arizona today, hopefully the Mets win. I mean, you look at the Mets schedule, obviously the All-Star break comes up. And unfortunately, like our luck, the Mets will win 3 out of their next 4 games and be, 8-1 in their last 9, right? And they'll have an All-Star break, which sucks, right? But the Mets, again, if the Mets are playing well, and I know the break's gonna suck here for us, but you got the Dodgers. We just talked about that, right? That's a team that's the second wild card spot, right? That's a team you got to beat, right? You're chasing the Phillies and the Dodgers right now, which in all aspects you're 8 games from in total for a second wild card spot and 6.5 from the third wild card spot, right? You got the Dodgers, the White Sox, the Red Sox, the Yankees, and Nationals for 4. The rest of the month there, you're playing a guy like the Dodgers. The Dodgers, the Mets are good. The Mets played well in LA. They've been playing better ever since then. But the Mets can beat the Dodgers, especially if they get the rotation back where Quintana's coming back, which is very important. You got the White Sox, who are definitely going to be sellers at the deadline. That team at home, you got to beat. The Mets go to Fenway, which I will be in Boston for that trip. The Mets got to take 2 out of 3 against Boston. And the Yankee series, I always see the Yankee series, especially a 2-game series, as a split because it usually happens that way. And then you have Washington for 4, who the Mets need to take advantage of. So the rest of the month here, right? And even in August, you got KC, Baltimore, tough. You got the Cubs, right? You got teams that the Mets should beat, but that doesn't mean the Mets could, because the Mets haven't beaten the teams they're supposed to beat. But if they go on a stretch here, right? You finish off the Diamondbacks. Let's get the sweep tonight. You got 3 games against the Padres, who are a half a game in front of you. You take 2 out of 3, you leapfrog them. And the Cubs, if I'm not mistaken, let me just double check really quick. The Cubs are playing the Brewers right now. The Cubs just lost. So if the Mets win today, they jump over the Cubs. So the Mets just got – again, in 4 days, the Mets jumped over 2 teams. Right? They jumped over 2 teams. They jumped over Pittsburgh, and right now the Mets are tied with Chicago. So in 5 days before today, if the Mets win today, they jump over the Cubs. And if the Padres lose, which they are, I think they play today. No, they don't. So if the Mets win today, they're tied with the Padres, go into the series with the Padres. So the Mets take 2 out of 3. Now you already jump over officially the Padres, and now the Mets only have in front of them in the wild card is Milwaukee and San Francisco before they get to Philadelphia in the third wild card spot. So that is crazy to me that not even 5 days ago, the Mets were in the loss column 10 games out of a wild card spot. It took 4 games, 4 out of 5 days, for the Mets to gain 4 games in the loss column and jumped over 2 teams. And by the end of tonight, if they win, can jump over 3 teams. The Cubs, they jumped over Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh has the same record. They win today, they jump over Pittsburgh, they jump over the Cubs, and they jump over the Padres because the Padres are off today. Oh, excuse me. They'll be tied with the Padres going into that series. So in just a week, and that's why I said 1 week, and I think, oh, wow, the Orioles are absolutely demolishing the Yankees. A 3-run homer, now it's 12-0 Orioles over the Yankees. So the Orioles just are definitely going to take a split of this series, which all the Orioles needed to do was take a split of that series because the Yankees gained no ground. And again, for everybody who keeps on saying that the Yankees have no issue making the playoffs, they're in trouble. And I'm telling you that right now. This is the first time in a very long time they got multiple teams in their division that are better than them or that are at least competing for a playoff spot. And usually the Yankees always had that wild card spot as a security blanket. Now they don't, because there's other teams, not just in the East, that are fighting for a playoff spot, and they're in trouble. And I said that from the very beginning, they're in trouble. And there's no guarantee that Aaron Judge, on that unfortunate injury in Dodger Stadium, I don't think he's coming back this year. And listen, if the Yankees are smart, they will not let Judge come back because he's going to have surgery in the offseason. If the Yankees were smart, they should just like if it really goes downhill until July and they're out of a playoff spot, they might as well. I'm not saying sell, but they might as well just, you got 8 more years of Judge. You don't want an F foot injury can be deadly. Look, it already destroyed LeMahieu's career, right? He has that toe injury last year, and he's not the same player anymore. The last thing the Yankees needed for Aaron Judge to have 8 more years with a toe injury, because that's a problem. So, well, I mean, again, I always thought Luis Severino was a disaster, and he's in a contract year, and you would think a player like that, a player would be better in a contract year, but we all see what Michael Conforto did in the contract year as a Met. So, once again, guys, New York Mets are going for a sweep in Phoenix, Arizona against the Diamondbacks. The Mets have Carlos Carrasco on the Met and Reed Nelson for the Diamondbacks. The Mets are playing much better, and I'm not saying much better as everything's running on all cylinders here, because that's not been the case. The Mets have been winning ball games because they actually been pitching better as well. But last night was very, very 2022 Mets. A very good pitching performance, and the Mets finding a way offensively to win a ball game. That's why a lot of people got excited last night, and why you saw all over Twitter, like I jumped and I screamed. I pumped my fist. I was like, yeah, let's go, right? And I woke up my cat. I think I scared the hell out of my cat. I think he has 8 lives left after last night, because it was a game that, in 4 pitches, Chafin had 2 outs, and it just felt like it was over. And that felt like vintage Mets of 2022, right? It felt like that Philadelphia game last year when they came back, even though it wasn't many runs that the Mets had to come back from. But it felt a little bit more like the St. Louis game where Arenado made that error and the Mets came back and won that ball game in St. Louis. It felt like that type of game. And it felt like it rejuvenated this Mets team yesterday. You saw the faces, you saw the excitement. It wasn't, the 4-game winning streak is great, but when you win games like that, the morale of the team, the confidence of the team is up. And we talk about it all the time. Confidence matters. I don't care if you're a professional. Confidence matters. When your confidence is wavered, no matter if you're a pro or not, it's hard to get back on track. But when you got that confidence that, things are going right for you, like yesterday, right? The second out, it should have been a base hit up the middle, bounces off Robinson's leg and right to Pete Alonso. If that was 2 weeks ago, that would have hit Robinson and went into foul territory, and they would have had that guy on, and who knows what would have happened to that ball game. The ball is bouncing in the Mets' favor at this point right now, and you got to take advantage of it, right? And Chafin, who's been very good this year, struggled after that second out. Couldn't throw strikes, was getting frustrated on the mound, and that's where the Mets took advantage of, and that's why people got more excited. Not that the Mets won a 4-game winning streak because of it. Obviously, that's the case. That's great. But it's because it reminded you of vintage 2022 Mets for the majority of last season. How are you doing today? And let's get this win game tonight. Damn right, Michael. Let's go. Let's go, guys. So once again, guys, thank you for tuning in to the Mets pregame show live right here on Talkin' Mets at Rob. A lot of people have been emailing me and texting me and messaging me about why I haven't been doing games as of late. The West Coast games are always difficult because I do work overnight. I try to do it, and even, the games that were at 7 o'clock that I could have done. Unfortunately, I've been going to work a little bit earlier over the last week. Holiday week, it's been crazy. I do apologize for that. I will be getting back into it during the Padres series. I will do a live stream tomorrow night for the Padres game, so make sure to tune in for that. Saturday, I got a party to go to, so I can't do Saturday. Most likely Sunday, I will do also, and of course, that is leading up to the All-Star break, which I will be live during the Home Run Derby, just like I did last year, which was a lot of fun. And if things work out, maybe I will do the All-Star game as well, which a lot of people enjoyed. And, of course, Pete Alonso was in the Home Run Derby. So, of course, that is intriguing for Mets fans. And he's facing Julio Rodriguez in the first round, which is the hometown guy. Obviously, Seattle is the destination for the All-Star game this year. So I will be doing the Home Run Derby live on the channel. So again, tomorrow night, I will be doing the live stream for the first game of the Padres series, and most likely on Sunday. I believe Sunday's game is, let's see, sorry guys, I apologize. Just want to make sure I get it correct before I say something that is not right. So the Mets play San Diego on Sunday at 4:10. So I will be doing that game on Sunday. So Friday and Sunday I will be doing the final 2 out of 3 games before the All-Star break, and hopefully the Mets end this end of the first half, so to speak, on another series win. Again, I think it's more important. Look, you always want to sweep a series. You want to win tonight. It's going to be tough with Carrasco on the mound. You just hope the offense shows up. And again, they're facing a guy with nearly a 5 ERA. They got to put runs up on the board and give Carrasco a little bit of a chance here, because you do expect Carrasco to give up runs with a very good Arizona lineup who can take Carrasco deep, definitely. If Carrasco can give you 5 innings, hope for 6, but give you 5 innings, 3 or 4 runs, you just hope the offense, because you can't expect them more from Carrasco, even though his last 5 starts, if I'm not mistaken, Carrasco has only given up 2 runs in his 2 runs each of the last 5 games. So that's a good sign when it comes to Carlos Carrasco. He might not give you a lot of length, but you also got Trevor Gott now, another veteran that you can trust. So we'll see where the Mets are, but the Mets offense needs to show up tonight and help out Carrasco, because you do expect him to give you, give up a couple of runs here. And I think it's important to actually realize that. So once again, guys, the Mets are on a 4-game winning streak, looking to sweep the series against Arizona. And I can assure you, even after the Mets took a series against the Giants, nobody thought the Mets were going to win the series against Arizona. Some even believe that the Mets are going to get swept in Arizona, and that's why you play the game. Baseball is very unpredictable, and that's why we watch. If it was predictable, most people wouldn't watch, because the outcome is like, well, who cares, right? And I think that's where the Mets are when it comes to getting back into this race, because you only need a good stretch, a good 10-game stretch where the Mets are in right now. Unfortunately for them, they're going into the last 3-game series before the All-Star break, which sucks, because of the fact that when you're on a winning streak and you're playing well over a stretch, you don't want to break. Even though with guys like Scherzer, Verlander, Quintana, who's just coming back, who is going to start a game after the All-Star break, even though I believe the Mets wanted to pitch him in San Diego, but I don't think they are. He'll pitch after the All-Star break. So you're getting all these guys. You're going to have Alonso in the home run derby in the All-Star game, so he won't be rested, but everybody else will. Marte can rest. McNeil can get his act together. All these guys, Nimmo can rest up a little bit, because, for the majority of his career, he's been injured. He's been staying healthy, which is great, but you want to get him some rest as well. All these guys, the older guys here, a lot of older guys on the Mets, you give Robinson 4 or 5 days off. Ottavino can figure things out, right? Rarely can rest a little bit. So all your old guys are getting rest now, and that can help us in getting into the second half. And again, I just went over the games. After the Dodgers, you're playing teams that are at 500 or below 500. Those are teams you got to beat, right? And the Dodgers series is extremely important because they got the second wildcard spot. And at this moment, the Mets are 8 games back of the second wildcard spot. And if you take a series from the Dodgers, well, guess what? You gain a full game on them, 2 games on them, or a game and a half on them, depending on where they are. And it puts the Mets in a better position coming after that series. And that's why these next 2 series against the Padres and after the All-Star break against the Dodgers are very important, because the Mets, if they take 2 out of 3 against the Padres and the Dodgers struggle and lose a series prior to the All-Star break. And let me see who the Dodgers are facing. If you give me a second here, I'll find out in a heartbeat, or more than that, sorry. And Dodgers, where the hell are they? Where the hell are Dodgers? All right, I'm losing the Dodgers here. Hold on, guys. Technical difficulties. All right. So the Dodgers are playing the Pirates. So in this aspect, right, the Mets are tied with the Pirates right now, record-wise. You want the Pirates to beat them. Why? Because if you take care of your business, you're going to be head-to-head with the Pirates, right? If the Pirates take 2 out of 3 against the Dodgers and the Mets take 2 out of 3 against the Dodgers, the Mets gain some ground against the Dodgers and will probably gain ground in the wild card, in the third wild card as well. And Grant, I just saw your message pop up. I apologize. Let me see. I don't work till 9 a.m. I can moderate tonight if you want to open it up. I don't work till 9 a.m. tomorrow. Unfortunately, I didn't even set up the stream, so it's probably going to be a little difficult to set that up quickly. But I will keep you posted on other games during the year, Grant. So I appreciate that. If I would have realized that earlier, I would have made you the moderator and gave you access to the stream so you can do whatever you need to do with the stream. But once again, guys, I will try to do streams that I'm not going to be here and I will be at work, that I can have somebody moderate. So I'll definitely keep you posted on that. While if I'm at work, I can control it or have a moderator control it during the stream while I'm not here, so you guys can get the audio and, of course, game day as I usually do during live streams. But once again, guys, I'm gonna end it in about 10 minutes or so, about 5 minutes or so. The game starts at 9:40. Once again, the Mets are on a 4-game winning streak, looking to get 5-game winning streak and sweep the series against the Diamondbacks, which will be extremely impressive for a Diamondbacks team that is looking like they're going to win the NL West this year. And that is very shocking to a lot of people. But they've been very good this year, and this would be very a big confidence booster for the Mets if they can take this series, especially with Carrasco on the mound. I think it's very important. So that's where the Mets are right now. I'm going to give the lineup once again for the Mets. Just give me a second, and I'll be right with you. The New York Mets, Game 3 of a 3-game set, looking to sweep. Carlos Carrasco on the mound against Reed Nelson. Mets lineup for tonight before we finish up the stream. Brandon Nimmo leading off, playing center field. Tommy Pham batting second, playing left field. Francisco Lindor batting third, playing shortstop. Cleaning up, Pete Alonso playing first base. Daniel Vogelbach batting fifth and DH, and Starlin Marte batting sixth, playing right field. Jeff McNeil batting seventh, playing second base. Francisco Alvarez batting eighth and catching. And Luis Guillorme batting ninth and playing third base. Why is he playing third base? Because Brett Beatty has soreness in his hamstring, and Buck decided to keep him out and rest him up, but he is available off the bench in a late situation if need be, and that's why Guillorme is getting the start at third base. So with that said, guys, the New York Mets are going for the sweep of the Arizona Diamondbacks with Carrasco on the mound. The offense needs to show up tonight. I want 5 innings of 3-run baseball from Carlos Carrasco, but Carlos Carrasco in his last 5 starts has not given up more than 2 runs in any of those last 5 starts. So that's a good sign. If he does that, the Mets have a very good chance of winning. Again, length is not a big option for Carrasco anymore, right? He's a guy that is a 5-inning pitcher. You just hope that he can hold it to 3 runs or less. If you have 3 runs easy, I have no idea. I don't even have any excuse to give you. I don't know. I thought it was maybe he had numbers against Reed Nelson. He doesn't. He has no numbers against Nelson. Again, maybe it's a hunch. I don't know, right? Maybe Buck wants to get Vogelbach going. I don't know. I wouldn't put him behind Alonso, who is also struggling, but you're facing a guy that has nearly a 5 ERA. The Mets need to score runs tonight. It's very simple. You know, I don't care if you're Alonso 3 for his last 27 or wherever the hell it is, or I think he's batting like 190. He's not hitting well. Vogelbach, I think, is 3 for 25. Again, you got to hit this guy. It's very simple. Get on the board early, give Carrasco a lead, and let's get it done. So With that said, guys, the New York Mets are looking for the sweep, going for 5 games in a row, and looking to get back into this wild card race. Once again, there's 3 weeks until, a little over 3 weeks until the MLB trade deadline. And don't forget, guys, the MLB trade deadline, we're doing a 24-hour live stream. Go from the night before the deadline to into the deadline. I think it's 4 o'clock deadline or 3 o'clock, whatever the deadline is on trade deadline day on August 1st. Is it 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock? From the night before, the day before, I'm going to be constant 24-hour live stream. I'm going to have guys on that you've seen. I'm going to have Hayden on, Chris on, other guys that you already seen on this channel pop on to hang out with us and talk about the trade deadline. Or if, hopefully the Mets will be buyers at that point, and that would be a good sign if the Mets are, because that means they're back in the race. And again, if the Mets perform at their level, and I'm talking about Alonso being better, Marte being better, McNeil being better, Lindor being better. If those guys starting to play better with the rotation finally coming back into form, because there's a pretty good chance when Quintana comes back, Carrasco tonight is pitching for his rotation length, because David Peterson has 2 good starts in a row, and the Mets really like Peterson, and Peterson got good stuff. If he can harness what he has, he is better than Carlos Carrasco. Carrasco might be the odd man out, might be the long man in the bullpen, which might not be the worst idea. So with this rotation after the All-Star break coming into form and everybody pitching better, if you get this team to perform a little bit better, especially with the guys in the lineup, the Mets can be going into a 3-week stretch here where they can win ball games and be relevant. Again, there's a lot of people that are saying if you're within 4.5 games, there was a percentage. I forgot the percentage before I let you go. I wanted to give this number. I totally forgot to screenshot it. Somebody brought this up on Twitter. When a team is 4.5 out of a playoff spot, it doesn't mean if it's a division or a wild card spot, just a playoff spot. The team has a 76% chance of making the playoffs if they're 4.5 games or less from a playoff spot. So that seems like the number that I'm assuming the Mets are going to be looking at if they're within 4.5 games and they're playing well. Now, remember, if the Mets end up being 4.5 games but are not playing well, that are playing okay but nothing to be excited about, but because the teams in front of them are not playing well either, and the Mets game a couple of games but the Mets are not playing well, the Mets can still be sellers here, even if they're 4.5 games from a playoff spot. But if they're playing well and are within 4.5 games of a playoff spot, organizationally are going to see that percentage and saying we have a good shot, because if the teams in front of you are a big threat and are very good, and because of their division are the reason why they're in a situation of a wild card spot, I would say, all right, maybe you should sell. But these are teams that aren't very good or that are okay teams. Like, again, we just faced Philadelphia Phillies. The Mets were in a terrible stretch of June when the Mets faced the Phillies. The Mets should have easily won that series, and that was with Philadelphia playing better. And that is something that, Todd, great freaking point. The Mets were very far back. Because the Mets were playing better, they actually traded for Stroman. Remember, that was the same year where there were some conversations why the Mets didn't trade Wheeler in that spot to get something back, because we all knew the Wilpons weren't signing him. Drew, that is wrong. Again, that's no, it's not true. And you're not trading Alonso. That's just not going to happen. Again, Robinson can get you a top 5 prospect. Last year, Robinson got back a top 5 prospect, and he wasn't even as good as he was this year. Todd, I believe it was like 6 or 7 games. It was where the Mets were around this time, game-wise. So, with that said, the New York Mets have a chance here to make them relevant enough to make the organization believe that if they're in a spot where there are at least 4.5 games out of a wild card spot, the Mets can make a run here. And I'm not talking about big name searching here. I agree, Nick, that I talked about that about 15 minutes ago, right? Even the 2019 Mets went on a 15 and 16 game stretch, and that's where they got back into the hunt. Yeah, they faltered at the end, but this 2023 team is a lot better than that 2019 team. Maybe not rotation-wise, even though I would say that this rotation should be just as good. But the Mets have a chance here. Yeah, easy. You know why Martino brings up Alonso? Because he never writes anything of importance. He knew that bringing up Alonso in trade block situation, that will give him clicks. That's why he did it. Martino brings nothing to the table. He don't bring anything. He takes everybody else's information and makes it his own. And to get clicks and to get notoriety and to get people talking about him, he brings up trading Alonso, which is hilarious to me. That is not going to happen. He is the face of your franchise. It's not happening. And this team is not in rebuild mode. Even if this team falters and doesn't make the playoffs, they're in retool mode, not rebuild mode. You know, Robinson is our biggest trade piece here, if it comes down to that. Last year, he got a guy named Ben Brown that was top 5 in the Phillies system, a top pitching prospect for Robinson. Last year, David Robinson wasn't as good as he is this year. He's putting up better numbers this year. You can get a top 5 prospect for a desperate team that's looking for a closer. Well, Drew, you listen to MLB Network, who is embarrassing themselves. Have you seen their trades? The trade scenarios that they come up with? They're not very smart at that network, all right? I don't care if it's MLB Network, right? Those guys are ridiculously stupid. Did you see the Shohei Ohtani trade? They had everybody, including Alvarez, in that trade scenario. It's stupid. Yeah, but again, Drew, you can sign. Why would you keep Robinson if you're going to trade Alonso? That's stupid. Right? You can trade Robinson and still sign Robinson next year if you wanted to be the setup man for Diaz. That's what you can do. Well, yeah, Nick, because go back to last year and every year, the MLB Network comes up with these stupid trades and they make no sense. Right? You're not trading all those guys for a rental in Ohtani that there's no guarantee he's going to sign here. You're not doing that. And again, guys, the Angels are not trading Shohei Ohtani. Artie Moreno is looking at the bottom line at this point. With Trout being on the IL and the Angels faltering a little bit and slowly moving slower and slower away from a playoff spot, Artie Moreno is going to look to get every penny from Ohtani jerseys, Ohtani this, Ohtani that. He has a bobblehead right before the trade deadline. Easy, and that's another thing. Hey, Hector, what's up? Hector, I see you're very popular on that Facebook Mets page. Yeah, but you know what, Hector? Again, the same thing with JD Martinez. JD Martinez back was a huge issue even at the trade deadline last year. So, again, I would have been all on board for getting JD Martinez, but everybody was concerned about JD Martinez's back. And listen, the Dodgers got JD Martinez because they were spending no money. They hit lightning in a bottle with JD Martinez. Let's be honest with that, right? The Dodgers weren't really going for it this year. They were basically going on a prayer that they were going to go with the guys that they got and see if they were going to contend for a division or a playoff spot. Because they're very lucky the Padres aren't very good. Because if they were, the Dodgers would be even more in trouble. No, Drew, I agree. Look, I know there are a lot of fools. Again, the point of the matter is, if the Mets were rebuilding and they came out and said, listen, we're very old, Our farm system is there. Let's trade Alonso. Let's get a ton of prospects, and it's going to take 2 to 3 years. This team does not need to rebuild. This team needs to retool, right? If it comes to selling at the deadline, you're going to X for pitching prospects that are probably near the major league level, that are going to be at AAA or at AA, that are probably ready to come up next year with Mike Vasil, right? Because in 2025, you're going to have the Hamels and the Tidwells that are going to be a part of this rotation if they continue on the trend that they're supposed to be trending on. Yeah, but Drew, why trade Jeff McNeil when he's having a down season? You're not going to get that value that you would have had if you traded him in the offseason. McNeil has no value right now. You're gonna trade, pennies on the dollar here. So you can't trade a player when they're at their very lowest. You want to trade their player at their very high, like a Tommy Pham, like a David Robinson, like that. You can't trade McNeil because you're getting pennies on the dollar. Teams are not going to say, well, look at Jeff McNeil's numbers this year. I'm not giving you a top 10 prospect for him. It's not happening. And I don't think the Mets are trading Jeff McNeil because they just gave him a contract. I don't think they're going to do that. So, unfortunately for the Mets, they're in a spot now where they're playing well. When it gets to the later in, if 2 weeks from now, if the Mets are struggling again and they're more games out of a playoff spot, then we can talk about it more. But right now, let's talk about winning ball games because that's what the Mets are doing. In my opinion, I don't think I'm going to get even more excited about making a run until they go on a 6, 7, 8 game winning streak here. There needs to be a winning streak of 6 to 8 games here to really get me into oh shit mode. Let's go. Yeah, Drew, that's true. But you also, but you're not trading Pete to your division rival. It's not happening, right? If you trade him, you're going to trade him to the Angels or trade him to a team that's never going to be you're never going to worry about. Yeah, Nick, they're not trading Lindor, all right? If you trade Lindor, you better hope Mauricio puts up the same numbers as Lindor does because there's nobody in the National League shortstop-wise that are putting up better numbers than Francisco Lindor. So everybody wants to trade Francisco Lindor. Why? He's the best shortstop in Major League Baseball, and specifically in the National League. Right? He has more home runs than any shortstop, more RBIs than any shortstop. His average is slowly creeping up. If I'm not mistaken, Lindor's numbers and his batting average, let me just check really quick. Only a week ago, it was like 215, 210. He's up to 221. He's got it up 10 points. Again, it takes time with a lot of at-bats now to get that number up. But if he creeps up to 240, 250, he's going to hit 30 home runs and have 100 RBIs. Find me a shortstop that's going to do that. Not many. But salary's not an issue, buddy. You got Steve Cohen. You don't worry about the salary. But again, Drew, you're not looking at the paycheck anymore. He's putting up better numbers than every other shortstop in Major League Baseball. That's what you look at. You look at what he does position player-wise. Again, people don't realize when the Mets gave that contract to Francisco Lindor, there was expected Lindor, Correa, who was the other guy? Seager. Those guys were expected to get $300 million contracts that offseason. Remember, there was owners colluding to not spend that type of money at that offseason. So the Mets didn't know. The Mets are trying to be ahead of the curve here because that offseason, that next offseason, there was supposed to be many shortstops, Seager and Correa in particular, along with Lindor, that were projected to get $300 million contracts. Go back to that time. And again, Lindor is better than Seager. All right, let's be honest. Seager had a couple of good years? Lindor had a lot more better years and had a better year than Seager last year. Seager is not better than Lindor. Sorry. Sorry. He's having a good year this year, but where was he last year when the Rangers needed him? I'm sorry. When you have a top 3 shortstop in Major League Baseball, you're not trading him to get back prospect. That's just stupidity. All right. Lindor has been better than every shortstop in Major League Baseball. All numbers. Right? Right? Did everybody want Seager last year? Because I can guarantee you Lindor is going to have a better Mets career contract-wise than Seager's going to have Rangers-wise. They have similar contracts years-wise. So with that said, guys, let's have the Mets sweep this series. Carrasco on the mound. Let's see if the offense can come alive here and help Carrasco out. Mets are going for 5 in a row tonight. So with that said, guys, everybody have a great night. Let's go Mets. Have a good night, everybody. Let's get that sweep. Let's get 5 in a row. Have a good night, guys. Let's go Mets. I'll see you tomorrow night. Mets, Padres. Have a good night, guys.